This is Duke University.
Thank you all for coming. Doug Oberhelman has been chairman and CEO of Caterpillar since 2010. Caterpillar is the world's leading manufacturer of construction and mining equipment, diesel and natural gas engines, industrial gas turbines, and diesel electric locomotives. Doug joined the Caterpillar Treasury Department in 1975 and has led a wide variety of Caterpillar businesses over the course of his career. Since becoming chairman and CEO, he has led Caterpillar through accelerated business cycles and implemented cost efficiencies and lean manufacturing to improve global operations. He has also led the company to renew its focus on market share and customers while reinforcing its dedication to quality, safety, sustainability, and innovation. He serves on the board of directors of ExxonMobil, on the executive committee of the Business Roundtable, is a member of the Business Council, and former chair of the National Association of Manufacturers. He is vice president of the Wetlands America Trust, a member of the Nature Conservancy's Latin America Conservation Council, and chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Easter Seals Foundation of Central Illinois. Doug, it's truly my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Fuqua School of Business and on behalf of the greater Duke community. Thank you for coming.
So if I can add to that, Doug, it's fantastic to have you here and to have one of the world's great global companies represented, as well as one of the truly iconic brands in Caterpillar. So I thought I would start with the observation that John noted, that you went to Caterpillar in 1975, and as I understand it, your father actually worked at John Deere. So was this decision an act of rebellion on your part, or?
Well, no, it's absolutely true, and I'm very happy to be here with you, Bill, and all of you. We have had a very long relationship with Duke because of our plants here in North Carolina, and we've had relations that way. And recently, as you know, through CE, we've started a venture with you on our leadership development program. We could talk about that later too. And very optimistic about that one. In fact, that group this week is in India studying, which is great. But yeah, my dad was a John Deere salesman growing up, and I lived on farms in the city when I was a kid, so I was around equipment quite often. I didn't rebel, I don't think, but I just didn't get an offer from John Deere for some reason. I did from Caterpillar, it's like everybody else. I had worked in a bank, several banks for years in high school and college, and I thought I might go into banking, but I wasn't that enthused about banking at that time, and history's kind of worked out well, and I've enjoyed every minute. And I think there's something about equipment in my blood somewhere, and it just worked out that way. I'm happy about it. But he's still alive, and I give him Caterpillar models at Christmas, and he gives me John Deere stuff, so it works out just fine.
So 40 years with one company,
yes,
is fairly unusual in the world we live in today. And so I'm curious, why did you stay all that time? There must have been moments when you entertained the thoughts of leaving, when other companies were trying to convince you to leave. What was the thought process that you had that kept you at Caterpillar?
Yeah, I did have a couple of those moments, but a big company like Caterpillar, and I would say most big companies that have been around with a global footprint, every job that I took, that I had, and I've traveled the world, and I've lived in several foreign locations, every job was different. And while Caterpillar was the name on my paycheck, and I always went back to Pure, Illinois, which is the headquarters of Caterpillar, every single job was different. I can remember vividly moving to South America in 1981, and you all won't remember this, but this was before the fax machine. It was before the video cassette recorder.
I think there were telephones though, right? Is it?
Well, there were no cell phones, but the telephone for me was in my home. I'd pick it up, dial 0, an international operator would come on, actually 00. She would come on in Spanish, and I would say, I'd like to place a call to the United States. And she would say, thank you very much, sir. It'll be an 18-hour wait, and I'll call you back. This is a true story. So 18 hours later, the phone rings. I put my call in, and I could talk to my boss in Peoria. I was in South America. $3.50 a minute in those days. To do that, and today, of course, it's all free. My communication was now I'm telling you how old I am, showing you how old I am. My communication was something called a teletype. It was a 1-inch wide yellow spool of tape with holes punched in it. And mostly these were confidential for the work I was doing down there at the time. So I'd get the teletape out at the airport, the only place in town in the capital city of Uruguay that had teletype. And then I'd go to another place and run it through a printer, and I'd see what kind of information this is in my lifetime. And I remember moving back then to Miami in about 1984, and this great invention, the fax machine, had showed up. And we couldn't believe it, because that changed our life. And of course, today, the iPad, iPhones have changed my life again, but this is in my lifetime. So one of my messages to our new people that come in that are young, just imagine 40 years from now what this world is going to be. You can't imagine what it's going to be. There's no way we can imagine what it's going to be. It's great fun, but all those experiences meant a different kind of career path for me inside one, because I was in finance for a while, I was in engine sales and marketing for a while. I did lots of different things and moved around, and it was same company, but very different experiences.
Over 40 years, you obviously did many, many things right, or you wouldn't be where you are today. But I have to believe that you must have made a mistake or two as well. And,
oh yeah.
And so,
lots of them.
And so I'm wondering, was there ever a moment where you thought, I've messed up and I've derailed my career? And so if you could walk us through what that was like, and then more importantly, how did you bounce back? Because people will hit tough times.
Yeah, you told me you weren't going to tell me the questions. I wish you would have told me ahead of time. I remember a time, this particular time I was a district sales manager of all things. And I had done something that you don't do at Caterpillar, and I didn't know that at the time. And I remember my boss slamming the door, sitting down and said, "We do not do this. This is the end." And I left weak-kneed and wobbly and went to talk to someone else about it who had a little different feeling, and it worked out fine. But I remember a couple of those times very vividly, and you just move on. And I think if you dwell on that, you can't do it. You got to look forward and keep pushing what you're trying to do. And luckily, it worked out okay for me. And in that particular instance, this was a long time ago, and it's one I remember quite well, though. And I thought I really stepped on it now.
Yeah. So what about mentors? Did you
important, critical?
So how
absolutely critical?
How did you find these mentors who were so critical for you?
Well, one, probably the second, the guy I would call my second mentor, although it'd be right there at the top. It so happened that when I came to Caterpillar in 1975, my desk, in a sea of desks, at that time they were called bullpens, and everybody had a desk, a calendar, a pencil, and a phone. It was perfect. Was right outside the CFO office. And I didn't really know all this at the time, and I didn't find this out until almost 20 years later. But the guy was the CFO of the company at the time, and I sat right outside his office, and I remember conversations with him at night after, I'd work late, he'd leave late, he'd stop by, or he'd just run into him. And pretty soon, I started to be on little special assignment and projects that he was leading, and I didn't pay any attention to this. I was oblivious to this. And 20 years later, he said, "Doug," he said, he was retired. He said, "Doug, I remember so vividly those early conversations with you on currencies. He said nobody understood currencies at that time because floating the dollar was new in the 70s. But you understood those, and that's why I paid attention to you. I didn't know it for 20 years. And he had helped me immensely during that 20-year period in different things. He's alive today, he's 92, he's sharp as a tack. We still laugh about it. He lives out in Denver right now. And that's a guy that took me for some reason. It happened to be strictly the luck of where I was sitting because I'd run into him almost every day or frequently.
Or maybe the message is that you should really have some expertise that someone sees.
Yeah, yeah. You got to know what you're talking about, I guess, yeah. But I look at it as kind of serendipitous luck that I sat beside him and got to know him pretty well.
So luck does matter too. Yeah.
But believe it or not, in a career in life, luck plays a part. Mm-hmm. Luck plays a part. There's no question.
Yeah. So when people think of the CEO role, they think of all the wonderful things that allows you to do and the amazing ability from that platform you have to drive change in the world. What's most challenging for you about being CEO?
Oh, this is easy. Tough answer, but an easy answer. The balance between what I call the three legs on the stool. The three legs are employees, owners of the company, the shareholders, and customers. And you don't really feel it in a company, and I would suggest this would be the case even in a small company, even in a small private business, where you're the owner, you have several employees and several customers. But in our case, it's very true. And if we get any one of those three legs shorter or longer than the other, this stool gets wobbly. And I've talked about this all the way through my time as CEO, because when we're pumping out quality product and our market share is rising, our customers are generally happy. When we have a quality problem in some of our machines, that leg starts to wobble. Right now, we're in a big downdraft in our total shareholder return for the last 3 years. Our company has lost $20 billion off the top line. Our owners are not happy. Our employees are not that happy because our bonuses have shrunk. We've just gone through a major layoff. We've separated over the last 3 years 30,000 people. Our people are nervous, so the leg's wobbly. And so my balance is, how do I juggle these three constituencies, and how do I keep those legs of that stool perfectly equal every single day? And it's hard, because every investor wants more dividends or a higher share price. And some of them don't care what you do for your business. Index funds, a lot of them do not care your business. If your return's not going up, they're out. They're fickle, they're out. It's a daily thing. Our customers, if our market share isn't rising, or if our quality of our machines aren't good, or they want more technology, we've got to invest more in R&D, they always want more. Our employees always want more. Of course, who doesn't? Whether it's pay or benefits, it's understandable, it's human nature. So how do we juggle that and get that right, to me, is the CEO is the great balancer of all of that. And while it's an easy answer to give you, that's the biggest challenge I face, it's difficult to do that every single day in the world that we live in today. And I don't think the world we live in today is that much different than history. I think all CEOs have probably battled with this balancing act for many, many years. Yeah.
So given that that's a very, very difficult balancing act, what motivates you to keep at it?
Well, in my case, it's easy because as you said, we've got an iconic brand. I love this brand. I love this customer base. I love what we do. Just this afternoon, I was out here in Clayton at our facility where we make small wheel loaders, design, develop, and produce them out there. We were out in the dirt. I've still got dirt on my legs here in the machines, and I love that stuff. And I love being with customers, and I love being in our factories. And that, to me, is just a wonderful thing. And the fact that we've got 90 years of history, and I get to be here for this little short period of time to make sure that we're here 90 years from now. Yeah. And that's a great motivation for me and a great obligation. And, and I love every single day, even the rocky days that we have.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about values. and the role that values have in protecting and maintaining your reputation. So my sense is that they're very important to you in guiding the firm. So can you help us understand in practice, like what does that mean that the values are central to what you do?
I think every company has got to have a set of things that they believe in, and that's really what values are. It's not unlike a couple, you and your wife, me and my wife, family. What defines you as the values of what you're trying to do. And the one thing that has been so satisfying for me as we've grown around the world, particularly in the last 10 years or 15 years, as the world has opened up, and we've put factories and offices in places that we never were there before, China, India, all over the world, Southeast Asia, you name it. And the feedback we get from our new employees that come in, and we give them lots of culture training, lots of values training, is that, we really like this because we know it's a fair playing field. I know that if I do well, I should be recognized for that and I can advance. Because frankly, a lot of cultures and a lot of economies aren't built that way. It's very different. And I've been very surprised consistently around the world with how important that is to people. And coming up in our culture, I kind of take it for granted because that's what I grew up in. But boy, it's important. And as leaders, and it's not just the CEO, it's the top executive team. In my case, I'm going to say our officer group of about 35 or so, really have to lead that every day. Whether it's little stuff that's important, like cheating on expense books, to big stuff in dealing with officials, to you name it, day-to-day things, treating your coworker in a way that is respectful. I mean, it's all of this that added together. Can our customers count on the quality of our machines and that we stand behind it every single day and we mean what we say? That's a big piece of it.
So could you give examples of where having these core values kept you out of trouble, or where they actually created some tension where you needed to go down a path and that was a tough thing to do, but you had to stay true to your values?
Yeah, I remember as a young, new guy traveling the world, and the world was a lot different in the 70s and 80s. Everything from getting into the country faster with a $10 bill in your passport, which we did not do, but I watched all the time in those days, to bigger stuff. And it was pounded into us at an early age at Caterpillar, this is what we don't do. Well, and guess what? The people we dealt with then knew we didn't do it, so the standards were raised. And I think that's a big obligation we all have.
Okay. So let me shift to away from values, or maybe to stick with values in some sense, and talk about what Caterpillar's been doing in the sustainability domain. And I know this has been really important at Caterpillar, and you've been recognized for your work. I guess I'm curious, with your ambitions and your success in this space, you talked about this three-legged stool. Have you had pushback from the shareholders around, hey, what are you doing around sustainability? You should be focused on creating higher shareholder value.
Great question. And the things that we do around sustainability, and I'll give you a concrete example here in a minute. I can't identify, I think my team would be hard pressed to identify anything that has aided sustainability or the environment that didn't help shareholders, employees, or customers. I remember in the early days of Six Sigma, when we introduced Six Sigma in our company years ago, and we had a project that was really interesting around, and it was a lady I had known for years that led this, a clerk. And she was the leader of this project, and she was so proud of this project that she had done to identify tax savings through low energy lighting. And this just really struck me, because I thought, here we are talking sustainability. She's talking about how to get tax credit for low energy lighting, which led to then most of our facilities going into clean and light, really efficient energy lighting. And so I've used this example because it's 20 years ago, but it's really a good one. And who doesn't win in that one? We were taking advantage of tax credits for the shareholders, available, legal, way to go. We were lowering our energy coefficient, wonderful, and we had a very happy employee and employees as they went out and talked about how they could save the environment. It was just wonderful. So that, and our biggest, I think our biggest thing around sustainability is our remanufacturing and recycling business. We actually take, and all of you that go through the construction equipment zones out here, and it was beautiful. We drove from the airport down to Cary and back. That's a road job. It's great. A lot of CAD equipment out. I love it. but those machines that you see out there can be basically completely rebuilt for 2 and 3 lives. So let's say they reach the end of their first life in 5 years' time, 10,000, 12,000 hours on the machine. It's worn out. We can take that machine, the dealer will take it back, completely refurbish it. We'll send a lot of those components to us at Caterpillar. We've got a huge remanufacturing center in Mississippi. We'll take an engine completely apart, save 98% of it, redo it, remanufacture it, we say. We put it right back in a new box with a new warranty and send it right back out to the customers. And of course, you don't need to use copper. You can use copper twice. You don't need to mine copper in that case of an alternator. Gray iron casting, which includes iron ore or whatever, you don't use that a second time. It's a wonderful thing, and guess what? It's very profitable, and our customers love it. So I'm hard-pressed to find any of our issues around how we look at sustainability that's not good for all the constituents, really.
Yeah. So you became CEO in 2010, and so this is kind of post financial crisis as we're climbing back out.
Yeah.
And so the kind of early years, maybe first year and a half, things are going reasonably smoothly. I think it was Mike Tyson who said that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And so a year and a half into your tenure as CEO, Caterpillar gets knocked back and has been knocked back pretty hard ever since with this convergence of kind of mining and oil and gas and the economic downturn and so on. So what did you have to change? You had plans presumably, and you had to change those plans.
We just put an outlook out on the 24th of September for 2016 that says we'll basically be around $45 billion in sales. This is the 4th time we've been at $45 billion in sales in 10 years. The great growth spurt in the 2000s, around 04, we hit $45 billion. We peaked at $52 billion in 08. We dropped to $32 billion in 09. So we went down. That's the second one. We came out in 10 at about $42 billion, 11, about 50-some billion. So we went past 45 on the way up. We peaked at $66 billion in 12 and 45 next year again. So like this period of time. And one lesson, several lessons I learned from a lot of earlier recessions. And when I lived in South America was a great one. It'll be a little longer story than the answer you want probably, but I'll never forget this as long as I live. I moved to Montevideo, Uruguay in 1981, which was right after the great petrodollar recycling of the 70s. When oil went to $35 a barrel, all the money in the world went to the Middle East. They recycled it through the big banks and recycled it to places like Argentina. And in Argentina in 1979, we sold 1,200 machines. In the 3 years I lived there, we sold 4. I watched countries go bankrupt, companies go bankrupt, families lose everything in that period of time. But you learned how to survive, how to thrive and do things. Manage your balance sheet, do all kinds of things. So as time went on, we have gotten pretty good at Caterpillar in these big boom and bust. And of course, the big super cycle of the 2000s in commodities, everybody knew it wasn't going to last, but it sure as hell was fun, put it that way. And then it really started to collapse in 12, and the world is still adjusting to all of this. The BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, turned into sand for the most part today. They've all, look at Russia today, look at Brazil today. China's okay, but still falling. We'll catch a bottom here, I think, pretty quickly. And India's okay, but not great. So all of that really helped the world recover in 09, 10, and 11. In many ways, the BRICS saved the world. We don't have that today, and that's why we're suffering with 2.5% GDP growth. Very slow growth. You don't add people. You don't spend money. It's very difficult to see growth with 2.5% growth. The world needs 3 to 4 to really add jobs. We haven't seen that now really since 07, 06. And that's what is the core of a lot of these things. What we're doing is working hard on doing everything in our 4 walls that we can to make sure we are bulletproof to whatever comes with us. Today we have the strongest balance sheet we've had since I've been at the company. We have good cash, we've maintained our dividend, we've got a great credit rating, we didn't lose it in 09, and that's gives us a lot of flexibility. Our operational metrics are good, our market share is up at very high levels, our safety record. So operationally, we're trying to do all we can to strengthen the company while the world out there the island is shrinking, frankly. But our market share is up significantly in the last few years, which puts a lot more field population out for us to sell parts to and service. So that's what we're trying to do, is go as fast as we can. And the other thing a downturn gives you is what I call a no excuses period. Everybody knows you have to do things that you wouldn't normally do and you don't like to. But nobody thinks you have to give them an excuse. They know, everybody knows. So our people, we're going through that and doing some things that we normally wouldn't do.
Yeah.
We'll be lean and mean when it turns around, and it will turn around.
Yeah. So you have had a number of global assignments in your career. Do you think that those global assignments put you in a better position to deal with
No question.
the situation today?
No question, by far.
Yeah.
For me, a little kid moving to South America, I was 28, I guess. I'd taken maybe 1 or 2 international trips before that. I hitchhiked in Europe for 3 weeks in the early 70s. You can imagine what that was like. But the time I spent in Uruguay, it was great in Uruguay because my boss was in the United States. I was the only Caterpillar person in Uruguay. We covered the Southern Cone, and I learned how to speak Spanish. I learned a lot of things in a tough environment, different culture. I moved to Japan in '91, was there 4 years. Very different culture, but very meaningful. And for us, Japan, for construction equipment, was the center of the universe in the 80s. And so that was a wonderful experience, and everything else in between. So to me, that's definitely helped me. And
So,
2/3 of our sales are outside the U.S., so it's important. The global business is important to us.
So do you have advice for people today as they're embarking on their careers on how to make the most of these assignments when you're moving into new environments?
Yeah.
How do you actually open up and learn?
I get that question a lot on new people, not only new graduates, but new people. And my answer is pretty direct usually. And if you look at this group of students, I'm not sure everybody's in here I'm not sure where you are, but take a classroom, take a graduating class in finance or whatever. The ones we hire, and most companies hire, are going to have a grade point minimum. They're going to have certain things outside they've done, all the things that everybody wants in a new person. So people come to us basically with the same skill set on paper. Smart, lots of outside activities, usually pretty aggressive, what everybody wants and hires for. So what sets them apart as they go forward in a career? Number one, I think, raising your hand. And while I describe the experience of me sitting outside the CFO office, no matter where you are, you've got to outwork the guy next to you, and you've got to be recognized for it. And the way we do it, and it's been a wonderful thing, is a lot of special projects. In our case, when we introduced, I go back to Six Sigma a little bit, because that brought all kinds of new people that we didn't even know in our company before. Smart people that could get things done, but it was all voluntary. We didn't force you to be a Six Sigma black belt. You kind of had to come in and take a class, educate yourself, demonstrate you were good at it, but we met all these new people. And it was the best thing that ever happened to us, but it was all based on their ambition, what they wanted to do. And the other thing, in a big company especially, you've got to look out for your own career. You've got to sign up for extra education, outside activities, whatever it is to better yourself. And then make sure you're communicating with your supervisor, whoever your mentor is, or however it works, wherever you are, that, look, this is what I want to do. And that really tends to help. But you've got to find a way to have that ambition, and not in a political way, but have that ambition that we all have, proven and demonstrated, and then delivered. And a lot of that's on your shoulders.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is a hallmark for you is your honesty and directness. And that's something that requires skill to be able to deliver that in a way that you get the results that you want. And so I'm gonna give you an example of what I mean by that. This is something you said about a month ago, I think, which is in response to an earning report. Our day will come, but it's not right now.
Yeah, I did say that.
And
the stock went up. And the stock went up.
Yeah.
There is a God.
So that leads to several questions, which is, number one, how is it that you are able to deliver the direct messages and get people to listen as opposed to be defensive? I mean, how have you figured that out?
Great question. I don't know that I have figured it out, but one thing that really bothers me is corporate speak. And and my team here is, a couple of my team members are down here, and they'll wince when I say this, but the Dilbert stuff doesn't work. And so we've the last few months, we've had a really difficult set of communications. With our big restructuring announcement, we had an early retirement program, a reduction in force. And the one thing I've asked all of my leaders is, get out of the Dilbert and get out of the corporate speak. Let's talk to people. And yeah, it's one thing to say the strategy isn't working and the world growth is not 2.5% GDP and all this and all that, and therefore we are going to do a slight restructuring which will lead to some kind of changes in employment. Let's say what we're going to do. And I prefer being communicated with that way when somebody's talking to me. And I'd have to say, as I've gotten older in the job, I obviously everybody gains confidence in what they're doing, but that's one thing that's a winner. If you can be honest with people and your culture is part of that, it really helps. And so I think we've done a better job of that, but it's never perfect, and there's always the struggle to get that just right, because there's a balance between what you can say. You don't want to over-communicate negative things to the outside because it can be interpreted wrong. But I did say that, and that was on CNBC. And I remember that well, and it just sort of came out. But it's true. I mean, our time will come. And when it comes, I'm going to be the head cheerleader. Watch out. But right now, it's not it.
So how do you keep people motivated in this environment where it's not your day?
Yeah, it's not, and it's a tough environment in a company that we're going from 66 billion top line to 45 billion, $20 billion reduction. 2/3 of the S&P 500 companies are smaller than 20 billion. So we've lost the equivalent of 2/3 of 300 to 500, whatever it is, out of the S&P in 3 years' time. It's traumatic. We've maintained our credit rating, we've maintained our dividend, our balance sheet's strong, and we've managed to keep people in the boat. How have we done it? For one thing, at Capital, most people are used to cycles. This is our business. This is how we do it. We thrive in the downside and we do it well in the upside. But the other thing is that we've got several things we're working on right now that are new, exciting, and will define our future. Number one, how do we use data analytics? This is the greatest thing that ever happened. The construction industry is notoriously behind in technology. Not just construction equipment, but building a building, building a road. All of this it's hard for people to change. And all the indices around construction are antiquated in terms of productivity gains. There's a huge opportunity here for us. Meanwhile, we have all this technology at our fingertips now that we can use. So we're working very hard to connect up all of the machines out there that are in the field population and the ones we're producing now to feed us information, to tell us what's going wrong, so we can actually go back to that guy out here on the interstate that's running a machine and tell him, stop that machine at the end of the shift because we're going to replace that part because it's going to fail in the next 5 days. And if it does, it's a catastrophic failure on that machine and you'll lose it. The next piece of that is our mechanic, our technician shows up at 6 o'clock at the end of the shift with the right parts and the right tools, fixes it, he's out of there the first time. We can't do that today. That's a tremendously productive world when we get there. So we're employing a lot of people around this. We're hiring different kinds of people. We're investing in a different way. It's the Internet of Things, but it isn't. It's our Caterpillar of Internet of big things, I'd say, that we can do. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting for people. We're doing a lot of work, and I watched it today out at Clayton in our factory there around lean manufacturing. And seeing tremendous improvements in safety and quality. People get excited about those things when they see productivity improvements that they're doing. And so we're pushing a lot of that right now in this downturn, what we call a trough, and trying to really get that message out while the news every day isn't that good.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask one more question and then turn it over to the audience. So to follow up on that last answer, as people in the audience think about where they're going to start their careers, should they be thinking about a place like Caterpillar because that's going to be where you're going to see the big technology disruption, or a construction industry? Is that where the opportunity is going to be? They shouldn't go to Silicon Valley?
Well, I think they should go everywhere. The remarkable thing we have in this country that we have to keep going, and the next generations have to keep it going, is the innovation from everything from Silicon Valley to financial services and capital markets to construction equipment or anything. I mean, we are so lucky to have that opportunity with the system we have that we've got to push to the next level, and technology is allowing that. And I'd put on a big advertisement to come to Caterpillar. We want to attract everybody we can, because my speech on this is pretty easy. We're at 7 billion people today. We're going to 9 billion people on this planet in 25 years. Everybody's going to want to live like this. They're going to want to drive on modern roads. They're going to want to drink clean water. And between where we are today and that state of living, Caterpillar's in that infrastructure. So I'm really optimistic. And then one of the tests I used, when I left school in 1975, the world was a pretty small place, 3 or 3.5 billion people, something like that. But the world was closed. China was completely closed. Russia was behind an Iron Curtain. Vietnam was just coming out of Southeast Asia, a horrible war. Latin America was bankrupt. I can go on. And basically the only people the world could trade with was North America, or not even Mexico to a degree, but North America, Europe, and Japan. And Japan was just emerging from the war, even though it had been a few years. So maybe 1 billion people were open for commerce in 1975. Today, 7 billion people, there may be 500 million people, places like Cuba, North Korea, Syria, obviously, a few really tough places that aren't open for business. The rest of the world wants to trade. We've got the greatest opportunity we've ever had, and our system works. And that's a big plus for the American system. And I think I'm just bullish on what business has to do for the future. You look back, I'm a little bit lectury here, sorry, Dean, but you look back over the last 25 years, and the average income in the world has gone up so much. And places like Brazil, places like Africa now have a rising, a very good, solid middle class. And we can all trade with them. And when I moved to Uruguay in '81 and traveled all of South America, it was very poor. Today, it's as modern as we are in many places. So I'm really optimistic on our system. There's an obligation for us as leaders to keep that going. But I wouldn't discourage anybody from going anywhere, because there's just going to be so much opportunity coming up for people. And the technology today, like I said earlier, imagine 40 years from now what the technology is going to look like, the world will be like, when I didn't even have, I couldn't even get a phone line in 1981 in the United States. I can't imagine what this is going to be in a few years. Yeah. And everybody gets to live that coming up.
Yeah. Okay, so questions from the audience.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Vargas. I just had a question regarding external competitive forces, whether it be technology or other competitors internationally that are of concern to your industry and to your company as well.
Yeah, we are seeing, we have a fairly defined set of what I would call iron competitors. We know who they are. There's only a couple in the United States, mostly Japan, China, and a few in Europe. And we know who they are. We know how to compete with them. We've competed with them for my whole career. It's kind of the same names. What we're now seeing around technology is a completely new set of competitors that we never dreamed we would see. And imagine you're a taxi cab driver in Raleigh. I suppose you have Uber here. I don't know, but
we do.
And you're really doing great as a taxi driver. Company, maybe you own the whole fleet. Most are monopolies, so they're making a lot of money. And here comes Uber. And overnight, the price of your medallion is cut in half over something you never saw coming. So we're watching, and we're really trying to push in areas where we can't imagine where they could come at us. And we've recently formed a venture with a really high-tech company on data analytics to try to get out and disrupt ourselves in our own way before somebody disrupts us. A classic example on this would be rental machines. Again, out of this job, there's probably a third of those machines on the highway out here that are rented. That's usually the ratio. And if you look at those machines on that job, at any given time, there's at least 10 or 15% that are not moving, they're parked. How efficient is that? You've got a $200,000 piece of equipment that's parked 4 hours a day. So one of the ideas that somebody had out in California said, let's put together that machine's owner and that machine's owner in Raleigh and see if we can't get them to use each other's machine and rent from each other more productively. Great idea. So our idea is try to figure out how to tap into this. We set up an office out in Silicon Valley for venture capital to try to keep an eye on this, but it's coming quickly and coming at us in every direction. It's amazing. Great opportunity for people, though. Great opportunity.
So one example to follow up on that question of disruption that you're facing right now relates to what you said about sustainability, which is you have your customers who are actually extending the life of their machines. And necessity is the mother of invention.
That's right.
And so now people are keeping machines far longer than you had ever seen before.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what we're seeing in the mining industry right now. I never would have dreamed that they would push the life of a machine that runs 23 and a half hours a day where they're pushing it. And really abusing machines and parts like they are, but they have to survive. And it's forcing a completely new way of thinking back on us to think about how we think about machine life, design life, and how we service that machine. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Is going to help us greatly. Being the industry leader, we ought to be out in front of this. So when we get through this, will be very rewarding because we'll have another productivity advantage to offer customers.
Okay, we've got a bunch of hands up. There we go.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to speak to us today.
Yes, sir.
Along the same lines of the technology, with Caterpillar being a manufacturing industrial good company and moving towards this technology side, now how have you worked and your team worked to change the culture within Caterpillar?
This is great. This is a great question. I went up to Chicago 3 years ago next month and met the founder of Groupon. Everybody probably knows Groupon, who has become our partner now. And I had just come from our board of directors meeting in Chicago. Had on a nice business suit, looked the part. Big corporate executive, fat cat CEO, whole thing. Anyway, I went over to their headquarters. They're in West Side in Chicago. They've got 6,000 people in this building. It was their Christmas party at lunchtime. There were dogs, there were cats, there were children, everybody was having fun, it was wide open, everybody was in a good mood, and the average age was about 35, if that. And here I am, like old grandpa coming in. And I was traumatized. And I went upstairs, and I talked to this guy, and he's writing on the board, and he's doing all this tech stuff. And I was like deer in the headlights. But we really hit it off. And by the time I left in a couple hours, we were cooking on ideas on what we had to do to change. So I go back to my office Monday morning. That was on a Thursday. Go back to my office on a Monday morning. We have every Monday morning what I call executive office roundtable, where myself and my direct reports meet for about an hour and just talk about things. And I thought, okay, I'm going to tell them how smart I am. So I laid this all out. And the first reaction was, gee, that's great, but we're already doing all that. I said, what? We're already doing all that? What do you mean? So it's been quite a process as we've gotten into this for us that design bulldozers and locomotives and gas turbines and really cool heavy iron stuff with a product cycle of maybe 5 to 10 years, and a software developer, in this case disruptive analytic developer, that has a 4-day product cycle. And it was like this for the first year. And now we're really getting there. It's really fun to see the change, because he thinks he can learn a lot from the way we operate in certain ways, and we can learn a lot from the way he operates, and that's why we have this joint venture. We're assigning people in his office. We want to come back and kind of co-populate back and forth. But it's really been an interesting clash, and it's kind of, I hate to say it, maybe shouldn't say, old line manufacturing is iconic company, been around forever, and a brand new startup that is just wild, and I love it. I just love it because there's so much opportunity. But it's been a real leadership challenge to try to get over this. And how do we get along with each other when I'm thinking 7 years and I'm thinking 90 in my case, and he's thinking, God, I got to get through the end of the week to make sure I get the input from my customers to update my website, because that's how we're going to communicate with our customers. It's been a wonderful clash. It's led to now, we have we've identified 7 key job roles in our company that are the backbone of our company. One of them is product manager. Very key job role for us. We just added one on digital analytics leader. And what do we want that job role and that person to look like? And we're going to go through a big change in terms of how we recruit, where we put them, what they do, how we administer them, how they interact with the rest of the company. But boy, it's really going to be a lot of fun, and opportunity is everywhere on this, just everywhere. And the guy sitting up here 20 years from now won't be talking about that road job. He's going to be talking about analytics and some kind of thing, and how the world is working that way. And that'll be a big revenue producer, and it'll be the backbone of the place. I hope I'm alive to come back and look at it.
You talked about having tough conversations recently and trying to cut through that corporate speak. I'm really curious what you and your leadership team did specifically that felt different in order to have those more authentic conversations during times of real change and really scary moments for your team.
Yeah, thank you. I think if you as a leader lead, state what you want and demonstrate it, people will line up. And not everybody's comfortable with that, but you push the needle as far as you can with it and make it go. But leaders have to lead. And frankly, if my team sees me talking corporate speak, they want to please me. Let's face it. Your folks, he's the dean. How can we make the dean happy? It's the way it works. So I work hard at
that one, but
sorry about that. But I work hard at that, and I'll give you another example that I'm really proud of, and that's it was new back in the early days of 2010, and I'm giving an all-employee meeting like this with video all over the world, And I had a question on something and how important customers were to Caterpillar. And I popped up out of the top of my mind, I said, you know, I pledge to you all that I'm going to call on a customer a week as long as I'm CEO of the company. Because I thought we had become fairly insulated from customers at that time. And that's been one of my really key initiatives, is getting back closer to what customers want from us. And I said, I don't want to do that because I like calling on customers. I've got nothing else to do. I want to do it to show that our people ought to be calling on customers. Because we did a little survey as part of that strategic planning group. And many of our senior leaders had never called on a customer. And we dug a little deeper, and it was because they were afraid to, because they didn't know how to do it. Rightly so. So we really opened that up, and believe it or not, I've called on a customer a week, and it's hard, but now it's easy. But in those early days, the first reaction I got was good, because a lot of our people said, oh, we can't have the CEO call on a customer. He won't know what we're thinking. You gotta be kidding me. But it's really taken effect, and I'm hoping the anti-Dilbert corporate speak thing will as well through these tough times. But you really have to set the tone at the top in all things. In all things, the values of the company, the way you speak, the examples you lead, and you have to live it every single day, and the leaders have to do it. And I count on, in this case, the top 35, they're all corporate officers. Every day, I count on them, and then we have the next level down, which is about 350, that I spend a lot of time with, and our leaders spend a lot of time with, to talk about where we're going on strategy, and I count on that group then to get out to the rest of our 100,000 people.
Thank you for coming here and speaking with us. What are some of the key attributes of your team that you think makes you successful? We have a very heavy emphasis on working in teams, and we'd like to know what are some of the key attributes for any team to be successful?
Some of our team's attributes that I look for?
Some of the key attributes of your team that you think makes the team successful.
I would put at the top of the list the desire to be accountable. And this is an interesting lesson I've learned. We went through a cycle where, as big companies do, good and bad, up and downs, and all the rest of it, where we really had a broad set of responsibilities, but no one was really in charge until it got right up to the CEO. And we had that for a number of years, and I just really didn't like that. So, and I kept hearing from our people that, you know, hold me accountable and I'll deliver the results. So we went after that in a big way in 2010, and you know, I learned two things on that. There are a certain amount of people that really want to be accountable and will live with the results. There's another group of people that say that don't want anything to do with being accountable with results, for whatever reason. And I've pushed that an awful lot, to be accountable for the results, and that's helped us in many of our operational metrics. I want the plant manager in this case out here at Clayton to feel he is personally responsible for the quality of every machine that comes out of that factory. He or she owns that. I want you to feel that, and we'll reward you for it, good or bad. And that's helped us a lot over these years, and I think that's one of the key ones. I think the ability to listen is another good one as a leader. Whether it's listen to your employees, listen to your customers, in my case, listen to the investors, and put that back in action. And that's a real challenge. But I think I probably put those two at the top. There's a lot of other ones, but maybe that's leadership. I don't know, but your management professors would probably call that leadership. But I certainly believe in it.
Mm-hmm. So,
okay.
Yeah, so we have one more in the front here.
So my question is, we've seen a wave of activist investors investing in big American corporations and agitating for change. And I remember this hedge fund manager, Jim Janos, famously publicly shorted the Caterpillar stock. So as somebody who is the CEO of a big company, and you spent your entire career at CAT. What are your thoughts on what is happening in finance right now when it comes to big companies?
Yeah, great question. And the activism movement is not new. It's been around forever in different forms. And I can remember back the famous book, Barbarians at the Gate. That was shareholder activism in those days. But be that as it may, I would say that the forms of activism are a continuum, from positive activism all the way to very negative, tear you up activism, and you read about them in the paper every day. Do I think about it? Yes. And in fact, we really try, and we're working hard to make sure we do the kind of principles. Now, it's hard when you're, in our case, our share price was peaked at 115, it's at 70. This is tough, but our market share is up, our metrics are up, our balance sheet's strong. The island's shrinking underneath us. I'm not giving excuses here, by the way, but that's a fact. So tell our story. Tell why we're making progress. When market turns around, watch out, we'll be stronger than ever. So that's part of it. But activist investors are part of where we are today. There's a lot of money behind those people, and they're going to be here for a while. And I suspect that will change as time goes on as well. And the continuum where it's needed is probably good for capitalism, no problem. But there's another side over here that's the dark side that I worry about. Great question, thank you. Probably a good question to end on if you want to end.
Well, Doug, thank you for joining us for such an insightful conversation. I think I speak for all of us when I say it was very relevant as we look forward to our careers coming up after business school.
Yeah,
so,
I maybe a concluding comment. You know, I'm glad I don't have to go through a career again because I'm quite happy with mine. But I will tell you, if I were entering the business world today in 2015, we're set up. It's going to be great because the world is going to change so fast. There's going to be all kinds of things going on we didn't have at our beck and call. We didn't have as resources. And right now the world's as upside down as it is, it's an opportunistic place. There's opportunities everywhere in the world you look. And I suspect those of you that are entering or soon to enter the business world, sitting up here in 40 years are going to say, wow, was this great? Like I'm saying, it's great as bad as it is right now. It's really going to be fun. And I don't want to do it again or do it over, but if I had to, starting out today, it's a good time to go. It's a good, and I told the dean in his office, and I'm borrowing your time here, I'm sorry, but whenever our people get discouraged and I hear people, well, they'll never recover, the world will never come back, or whoa, yeah, it's terrible. I always say, if I gave you $1,000 or $1 million to invest, September 14th, 2008, the day before Merrill Lynch went bankrupt, and I told you to put it in stocks, would you do it today? Well, yeah. What if I gave it to you and told you it's going to crash tomorrow? Of course you wouldn't do it. But we've got a long run here. And every time we've come out stronger than before. Maybe it takes longer. This is the longest recovery we've ever had in history. Okay. There is a recovery coming. It's underway. It will get better. So I'm quite optimistic about where we're headed in this world, as upside down and chaotic as it is right now. But I'm a child of the Vietnam era where they thought these kids were nuts and we wouldn't amount to anything. And maybe we did or we didn't, but the world recovered beautifully. Right. From 1969. Just think about that 40 years from now. With that, I'll conclude and thank you all.
Well, we have a small token of our appreciation, and please join me in thanking.
Dean, I have for you, you can put right up there next to your other memoirs, our big Caterpillar dozer.
Fantastic.
Pushing some North Carolina granite, I'm sure. Thank you very much to be here.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is a first because these are our traditional cat hats, but I understand blue is the color at Duke.
This is not a traditional color. Yeah.
These are usually black and yellow, but they're blue tonight. There's one for each of you as you leave the room, as you go. So thank you very much.